The wind carried the scent of rain and pine through the lonely hills of Montana as Ella Monroe tightened the strap on her saddle. Her heart was heavy, pounding against her ribs with every breath she took. The cabin behind her stood quiet, a small wooden refuge she'd built with her own hands after life had left her broken and lost. But it wasn't just the cabin she was leaving behind, it was him. She looked back once more, her eyes tracing the rough edges of the porch where they used to sit under the stars, sharing stories that healed parts of her she thought were gone forever. The moonlight cut through the clouds, revealing a tall figure in the shadows, the cowboy who had waited for her every night since she'd arrived. His hat was low, his stance calm, but the pain in his eyes told a story words never could. Ella hadn't come to Montana to find love. She came to disappear. After losing her husband in a tragic wildfire 3 years earlier, she'd sold everything and fled the city where every corner whispered his name. She wanted silence, wanted to feel something other than the hollow ache in her chest. That's when she stumbled upon the small cabin at the edge of Cottonwood Ridge, abandoned, half-broken, and miles from anyone. Except for him, Logan Hayes, a quiet cowboy who owned the ranch across the ridge. He was the kind of man who spoke little but said everything through his eyes. A war veteran turned rancher, his life had been marked by loss, too. His younger brother had never made it back from deployment, and Logan had carried the weight of survivor's guilt like a shadow he couldn't shake. Their first meeting wasn't romantic, not even close. It was storming that night, and Ella's roof had caved in from the wind. She'd been trying to fix it alone when Logan showed up, drenched and wordless, just holding a lantern and a toolbox. "You'll catch your death out here," he said, his voice steady, his eyes soft. She wanted to tell him to leave, that she didn't need help. But something in his tone disarmed her. That night, they worked side by side in the cold rain. He didn't ask about her past, and she didn't ask about his. They just worked until the roof held steady again. Before leaving, he said quietly, "Sometimes, a cabin ain't the only thing that needs fixing." Then he walked into the storm, leaving her heart confused but strangely alive. Days turned into weeks. He'd drop by now and then, bringing firewood, fixing fences, checking on her old mare. They never talked much, but the silence between them became its own language. He'd sit on her porch while she brewed coffee, and sometimes they'd just watch the sunset without saying a word. Yet behind his calm smile, Ella sensed something haunted. Logan never talked about his past, but every night, she'd see him staring at the hills where his brother's grave lay. One evening, she found him there, kneeling in the dirt, shoulders shaking silently. Without thinking, she went to him. He didn't turn when she said his name. "He saved me," Logan finally whispered. "Told me to run while he stayed behind. And I did. I ran. I've been running ever since." Ella knelt beside him, tears filling her own eyes. "You think you're the only one running," she said softly. "I've been doing the same. I left everything behind after I lost Daniel. But the truth is, running doesn't make the pain smaller. It just makes the world lonelier." For the first time, he looked at her, really looked. And in that moment, two broken souls found a reflection of themselves in each other's grief. Over the next months, the bond between them deepened. She helped him rebuild his old barn, he taught her how to ride again. The laughter that had been buried for years began to rise back into her life, like wildflowers growing after a fire. But peace never stays forever. One morning, a letter arrived for Logan. He said it was from a rancher in Texas offering him work, a way to start over somewhere new. Ella tried to smile when he told her, but her heart crumbled inside. She didn't stop him, she didn't beg him to stay. Because she knew what running looked like, and maybe, this time, he needed to face his own journey alone. Days turned to weeks without him. The cabin felt emptier than ever. The silence that once soothed her now cut deep. Then came that final night. She had packed her bags, ready to leave the mountains for good. The memories were too much, and her heart couldn't bear to lose again. But as she mounted her horse and looked back at the cabin one last time, she saw him, standing in the shadows by the porch, hat in hand, eyes locked on hers. "I thought you were gone," she said, voice trembling. "I was," he replied, stepping into the light. "But the road out of here didn't feel right without saying something first." Her breath caught as he walked closer. "You said once that running doesn't make the pain smaller," he continued. "You were right. I went looking for peace somewhere else, but all I found was distance. Everything that ever mattered to me was standing right here, in front of this cabin. Tears welled up in her eyes as the wind swept around them. "I don't know how to love anymore," she whispered. "Then let's learn together," he said, taking her hand. And for the first time in years, she let someone hold her heart without fear. The stars shimmered above as the rain began to fall, the same rain that had brought them together that very first night. Seasons passed, and the cabin on Cottonwood Ridge became a home again. The laughter that once seemed impossible filled the air, carried by the wind and echoed by the hills. They rebuilt not just walls and fences, but themselves. Logan planted wildflowers where his brother's grave rested, and Ella painted his name on the barn door as a symbol of peace, not pain. They never talked about forever, because they had learned the beauty of the present, the quiet, strong kind that doesn't need promises to feel real. Sometimes, Ella would still ride out at dawn and look back at the cabin, and the cowboy standing in the shadows, watching her with that same quiet devotion. But now, when she looked back, it wasn't to say goodbye. It was to remember how two broken hearts had found their way home.